John is 76 years old. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. He has a bad back and arthritis in both knees from his years of service. He can't walk long distances anymore, and airport terminals are impossible without a wheelchair. He knows this about himself, so he does everything right. 48 hours before his flight from San Francisco to visit his daughter in Boston, he called United Airlines directly and requested wheelchair assistance for both airports. The agent gave him a confirmation number. He wrote it down. The morning of his flight, he called again to make sure the request was still in the system. They confirmed it was, but John arrived at San Francisco International 3 hours early, just to be safe. He checked in, got his boarding pass, and told the gate agent he was waiting for wheelchair assistance. She said someone would be there soon. So John waited, and then 15 minutes passed, then 30 minutes. And so he did what anybody would do, and he asked again. The agent radioed someone and said they were on their way. 45 minutes passed, an hour passed. John's boarding group was called, but he couldn't board without help. Other passengers were staring at him. He felt completely humiliated. After 73 minutes, a wheelchair attendant finally arrived, rushed and annoyed. John made his flight, barely, but when he landed in Boston, his real nightmare began. His connecting flight to Portland, Maine, where his daughter lives, was leaving from another terminal. He'd requested wheelchair assistance for the connection. The confirmation email said it clearly. But when John got off the plane in Boston, there was no one waiting. He found a gate agent and showed his confirmation number. She radioed for help. John waited at that gate for 87 minutes. His connection left without him. It was the last flight of the day. United's customer service told him they could rebook him for the next afternoon, but they wouldn't provide a hotel because the missed connection was his responsibility. He was 76 years old, in pain, exhausted, and United Airlines expected him to sleep on the floor of Logan Airport, but that wasn't even the worst part. When John finally arrived in Portland the next day, he went to baggage claim to get his personal wheelchair, the custom one his VA doctor had prescribed for his specific injuries. The one that cost $4,000. It came out in 3 pieces. The frame was bent, the wheels were cracked, and the seat was torn completely off. United's baggage office gave him a claim form and told him to file online. No loaner wheelchair, no apology, and no accountability. If this can happen to a decorated veteran who did everything right, who followed every rule, who called ahead and confirmed twice, it can happen to anyone. And in 2026, it's happening more than ever before. I'm going to show you exactly what's going on with wheelchair assistance at airports, why the system has completely collapsed, who's really to blame, and most importantly, the specific steps that might save you or someone you love from the same nightmare John experienced. Have you or a loved one needed wheelchair assistance at an airport? Tell me your story in the comments, because what I'm hearing from people across the country is heartbreaking, and it's getting worse. And listen, if you've been wondering which wheelchairs, walkers, or mobility aids actually hold up to airline handling, the ones that won't fall apart or get damaged when you travel, I put together a list in the description. These are the same ones my senior clients rely on and have told me make their trips so much easier. Just wanted to share that in case it helps. Now, here's what nobody in the mainstream media is talking about, and there's a reason for that silence. Airlines spend billions of dollars on advertising, news networks depend on that money. So, when there's a story that makes airlines look bad, it often doesn't get the coverage it deserves. But the numbers don't lie, and the numbers are devastating. Between 2024 and 2026, complaints about wheelchair damage, wheelchair loss, and wheelchair assistance failures increased by 30%. Let that sink in for a moment. In just 2 years, the problem got 30% worse. Wait times for wheelchair assistance have exploded. In 2019, the average wait time at a major airport was about 15 minutes. Annoying, but manageable. In 2026, at hubs like Newark, O'Hare, and LAX, wheelchair users are waiting an average of 90 minutes or more. 90 minutes? That's longer than some flights. The Department of Transportation received over 15,000 wheelchair-related complaints in 2025 alone. 15,000 families who took the time to file official paperwork because they were so frustrated, so hurt, so abandoned by the system that they wanted it documented. And those are just the people who knew how to file complaints. Most seniors don't even know that option exists, so the real number is almost certainly higher. But here's what breaks my heart about this crisis. It's not just about missed flights or damaged equipment, although those things matter. It's about the human cost. It's about the 82-year-old woman who missed her daughter's wedding because wheelchair assistance never showed up at her connection in Denver. It's about the 74-year-old grandfather who couldn't make it to his grandson's graduation because the airline destroyed his wheelchair and he had no way to get around the destination city. It's about the widow who wanted to attend her husband's military burial at Arlington National Cemetery but couldn't risk flying alone anymore because she'd been abandoned at an airport twice before. These aren't just inconveniences, these are life moments, stolen. These are memories that can never be replaced, and the people suffering are the ones who can least afford to fight back. Seniors on fixed incomes, Veterans with service-related injuries, people who worked their whole lives and just want to see their families in their remaining years. But this didn't happen by accident. There's a specific reason the wheelchair assistance system collapsed, and it starts with fraud. There's a term that airport workers use, and when you hear it, you'll understand immediately why the system is broken. They call it Jetway Jesus. It refers to passengers who request wheelchair assistance at booking. Use the wheelchair to skip long TSA lines and board the plane early, and then miraculously walk off the aircraft at their destination without any help at all. It's fraud, it's disgusting, and it's increased by 30% between 2023 and 2026. Here's how it works. Able-bodied passengers discovered that if you request wheelchair assistance when you book your ticket, you get priority treatment at almost every step. You skip to the front of the TSA security line because you're classified as needing extra time. You get to board the plane before everyone else, which means guaranteed overhead bin space. At some airports, you even get escorted through a dedicated lane that bypasses the crowds entirely. For someone with no actual disability, it's a travel hack. For someone who genuinely needs help, it's a disaster. Every fake wheelchair request ties up a wheelchair and an attendant who should be helping someone like John. Every person who games the system makes the wait longer for people who have no other option. And it's gotten worse because of social media. In 2024 and 2025, travel influencers on TikTok and Instagram started posting videos teaching people how to request wheelchair assistance to beat airport crowds and hack the system. Some of these videos got millions of views. Millions of people learned how to exploit a service designed for disabled travelers. The comments on these videos are full of people bragging about how much time they saved, how easy it was, how no one questioned them. Meanwhile, real people are suffering. Airport workers and flight attendants can see what's happening, but they can't do anything about it. Airlines are terrified of Americans with Disabilities Act violations. If they question whether someone really needs a wheelchair, they could face massive lawsuits. So the official policy at every major airline is this: if someone requests a wheelchair, you provide it, no questions asked. That sounds compassionate, but in practice, it means there's zero verification and zero consequences for fraud. The system operates on an honor code, and thousands of people have decided they have no honor. I want to be very clear about something. The people committing this fraud are not the victims here, they're the villains. But the airlines love to use this fraud as an excuse for why the system is failing. As if the real problem is passengers misbehaving rather than airlines refusing to hire enough staff and invest in proper equipment. It's a convenient scapegoat. But while fraudsters game the system and airlines point fingers, the federal government abandoned the people who needed protection most. In December 2025, something happened that should have been a national scandal, but it barely made the news. The Department of Transportation announced they were pausing enforcement of new rules designed to protect disabled travelers. Let me explain what those rules were supposed to do, because when you understand what we lost, you'll be furious. The new regulations, which had been years in the making and were set to take effect in January 2026, would have required airlines to do three basic things. 1. Return wheelchairs and other mobility devices without damage. If a wheelchair was damaged, the airline would face fines. 2. Provide loaner wheelchairs immediately when a passenger's personal wheelchair was damaged or lost, so they wouldn't be stranded. 3. Establish maximum wait times for wheelchair assistance, with penalties if those times weren't met. These weren't radical demands. This was basic accountability. But in December, the DOT announced that enforcement of these rules was being paused indefinitely. The reason they gave was that airlines needed more time to comply, that the regulations were too complex, that implementation was moving too fast. The real reason became clear when investigative journalists followed the money. In 2024 and 2025, the airline industry spent over $4 million lobbying against these specific regulations. $4 million to avoid having to treat disabled passengers with basic dignity. The lobbying worked. The rules were shelved. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. At the same time, the DOT paused protections for disabled travelers. They launched a massive civility campaign telling passengers to say please and thank you to flight attendants. Secretary Pete Duffy appeared in videos asking passengers, "Are you being polite? Are you showing respect?" The government's priority was tone policing passengers, not holding airlines accountable for abandoning people in wheelchairs. Let me tell you about Sandra. She's 71 years old and uses a custom wheelchair that cost $8,000. It's fitted specifically for her spine condition. She can't use a standard wheelchair without significant pain. Sandra flew from Phoenix to visit her son in Chicago. When her wheelchair came off the baggage carousel, the frame was cracked in 2 places and one of the wheels was completely missing. She showed the baggage claim office the damage. They gave her a form. She asked for a loaner wheelchair so she could at least get out of the airport. They said they didn't have any available and suggested she rent one from a medical supply company. Sandra couldn't leave the airport for 14 hours. Her son had to drive 3 hours round trip to get a rental wheelchair and bring it to her. United eventually reimbursed her $600 for the repair. The actual cost was $2,200. She's still fighting for the rest 8 months later. This is what happens when the government decides that protecting airline profits is more important than protecting people. Does this make you angry? It should. Comment accountability if you think airlines should face real consequences when they fail disabled travelers. Because, right now, they face absolutely nothing. Let me show you the math that explains why airlines don't care about fixing this problem. The cost to provide proper wheelchair assistance, enough trained staff, well-maintained equipment, accountability systems, is approximately $18 per passenger who requests help. $18. That's what it would cost to do it right. Now, here's what airlines actually spend. By cutting corners, understaffing, using cheap subcontractors, and ignoring complaints, they've reduced their actual cost to about $7 per passenger. They're saving $11 per wheelchair request. That doesn't sound like much until you consider the scale. Millions of wheelchair assistance requests happen every year. Those $11 savings add up to tens of millions in profit. But what about the cost of lawsuits and settlements when things go wrong? Shouldn't that offset the savings? Here's the thing, it doesn't, because there are almost no penalties for wheelchair assistance failures. If an airline loses your luggage, they have to compensate you. If they bump you from a flight, there are specific dollar amounts they owe you. But if they abandon you in a wheelchair for 2 hours and you miss your connection, there's no automatic compensation, no required payment, no fine. The passenger has to file a complaint, hope the DOT investigates, and even then, the DOT usually just sends a letter telling the airline to do better next time. There's no financial consequence. Compare that to passenger misbehavior. If a passenger gets drunk and yells at a flight attendant, they can be fined up to $35,000. $35,000 for being rude. But if an airline abandons a disabled veteran in a wheelchair for 90 minutes, causing him to sleep on an airport floor, the fine is zero. The calculation is simple. It's cheaper for airlines to provide terrible wheelchair service and occasionally settle a lawsuit than it is to actually fix the system. In 2024, a leaked internal memo from a major airline, I won't name which one because I can't verify the source independently, but this memo was widely reported by credible outlets, categorized customer complaints by priority level. Wheelchair complaints were listed as low priority, minimal revenue impact. Think about that language, minimal revenue impact. They're not asking whether it's the right thing to do, they're asking whether fixing it affects their bottom line. And the answer is no, so they don't fix it. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was a high school English teacher for 37 years. She saved carefully and bought herself a top-of-the-line wheelchair when she retired, something comfortable and reliable that would let her travel and stay active. $12,000. Over 3 trips in 2 years, airlines damaged that wheelchair 3 times. Broken footrests, bent frame, cracked seat. Each time, she filed a claim. The total compensation she received for $12,000 worth of damage across 3 incidents was $600. 600 airlines are treating wheelchairs like disposable luggage, and they're getting away with it because the system has no teeth. So, if airlines won't help and the government won't enforce, who pays the price? The answer is the people who can least afford it. Maria is 71 years old. She has multiple sclerosis, and she uses a wheelchair for any distance longer than a few steps. Last year, her father, who lived in California while Maria lives in Florida, was moved into hospice care. The doctor said he had maybe a week left. Maria booked the fastest flight she could find, which had a connection in Chicago. She requested wheelchair assistance for both legs. She had the confirmation numbers. She'd called the airline twice to verify. When Maria landed in Chicago, there was no wheelchair waiting. She asked a gate agent, who radioed for help. Maria's connection was leaving in 40 minutes from a gate on the opposite side of the terminal. She waited. 30 minutes passed. She asked again. The agent said someone was coming. 15 minutes before her flight, still no wheelchair. Maria made a decision she regret for the rest of her life. She tried to walk. She made it about 50 feet before her legs gave out. She fell in the middle of the terminal. Airport medics came, helped her to a medical station, and checked her for injuries. By the time they cleared her, her flight was gone. The next available flight wasn't until the following morning. Maria got to California 18 hours later than planned. Her father had died 3 hours before she arrived. She missed saying goodbye because an airline didn't provide the wheelchair assistance they'd promised. Then, there's Robert. Hughes, 68, and had knee replacement surgery 6 weeks before a planned trip to his grandson's wedding in Seattle. His doctor cleared him to fly, but said he absolutely needed wheelchair assistance. He couldn't walk long distances or stand for extended periods. Robert requested a wheelchair. When he arrived at the airport, no wheelchair came. After 20 minutes, Robert made a terrible choice. He decided to use his crutches and try to make it to the gate himself. Halfway through the terminal, he lost his balance and fell. He injured the knee that had just been surgically repaired. He was taken to the hospital by ambulance and missed the wedding entirely. He needed a second surgery to fix the damage from the fall. The airline's response when Robert's lawyer contacted them was that Wheelchair assistance is provided on a best effort basis and they cannot guarantee service. Dorothy is 79 years old and has Parkinson's disease. She was traveling to visit her sister and had requested wheelchair assistance. After landing, she waited at the gate for 40 minutes. No one came. She asked repeatedly for help, but the gate agents kept saying someone was on the way. Dorothy has limited bladder control because of her condition. After 40 minutes of waiting, sitting in an airport wheelchair that no attendant ever came to push, she had an accident. She soiled herself in a crowded airport terminal, surrounded by strangers. When an attendant finally arrived, Dorothy was in tears, humiliated, shaking. She was 79 years old, and an airline's failure had stripped her of her dignity in the most devastating way possible. These stories aren't outliers. They're not rare exceptions. They're happening every single day at airports across the country. 22% of wheelchair assistance requests come from military veterans. People who served this country, who sacrificed their bodies in wars we sent them to fight, are being abandoned in airports by corporations that made $32 billion in profit last year. And it's not just missed flights. It's missed final goodbyes. It's missed weddings and graduations and first birthdays. It's grandparents who stop traveling entirely because they're too scared to risk it. It's widows who can't attend their husband's funeral. It's people giving up their independence and their freedom because a system that's supposed to help them has completely failed. If you've experienced this, or you know someone who has, share this video. Their stories need to be heard, and the only way this changes is if enough people refuse to stay silent. Now, let me show you how airlines get away with this, because it's not just negligence. It's designed into the system. When you buy an airline ticket, you're also agreeing to something called the contract of carriage. It's that massive document full of legal language that no one ever reads. Buried in those contracts are the rules around wheelchair assistance, and they're written specifically to protect the airline, not you. Here's what every major US airlines contract says, in slightly different words, but with the same meaning. The airline will make a reasonable effort to provide wheelchair assistance, but they do not guarantee service. Let's break down what that actually means. Reasonable effort is not defined. There's no specific time frame. There's no requirement that they actually succeed in providing help. They just have to try, and the airline itself gets to decide what counts as trying. If you miss a flight because wheelchair assistance didn't show up, the contract says that's your responsibility, not theirs. Yours, even though you requested help in advance, even though you have a confirmation number, even though the failure was entirely on their end, the missed connection is classified as your fault. That means no compensation, no hotel, no meal vouchers, no rebooking without fees. You pay for their failure. I went through Delta's contract of carriage with a lawyer, and we found something buried on page 47. Delta's liability for wheelchair assistance failures is limited to cases of gross negligence or willful misconduct. Think about what that means. Regular negligence, the kind where they just didn't send anyone to help you, doesn't count. It has to be gross negligence, which is a much higher legal standard. And proving gross negligence requires hiring a lawyer, filing a lawsuit, and spending months or years in litigation. For most seniors on fixed incomes, that's not realistic. The lawyer's fees alone could be $10,000 or more. So even when airlines are clearly in the wrong, most people can't afford to fight. The contracts are written to make accountability functionally impossible. But it gets even worse when you look at how the actual wheelchair assistance system is structured. The wheelchair attendants you see at airports, the people pushing wheelchairs and helping passengers, they're not employed by the airlines in most cases. They work for third-party subcontractors. The airlines hire companies like Prospect Airport Services or Prime Flight to handle wheelchair assistance. Those companies hire the actual workers. Why does that matter? Because it creates a layer of distance between the airline and accountability. When something goes wrong, the airline can say, "That's not our employee, that's the contractor's problem." The contractor can say, "We're understaffed because the airline didn't pay us enough to hire more people." Everyone points fingers, and no one takes responsibility. Now let's talk about the people actually doing this work. Wheelchair attendants at most airports make between $12 and $15 an hour. That's barely above minimum wage. The job is physically demanding, the hours are unpredictable, and the working conditions are stressful. The turnover rate is 90% within 6 months. 90%. Think about what that means for service quality. The person helping you probably started the job within the last few months. They're overworked, underpaid, and they know they probably won't be doing this job much longer. Most airports provide minimal training. Some contractors give new wheelchair attendants as little as 4 hours of orientation before putting them on the floor. 4 hours to learn the entire airport layout, safety procedures, how to operate different types of wheelchairs, and how to assist passengers with a wide range of disabilities and medical needs. The incentive structure makes everything worse. Attendants are often judged by how many passengers they move per hour. The faster they work, the better their metrics look. There's no reward for taking extra time to make sure a passenger feels safe and comfortable. There's no penalty for rushing, and there's definitely no penalty for not showing up at all, because the contractor can always blame understaffing. In 2025, an airport worker leaked an internal memo from a major hub airport, and this memo made it into the news because it was so shocking. The directive told wheelchair attendants to prioritize ambulatory passengers during peak times. Let me translate that. During busy hours, if you can walk at all, even with difficulty, you're moved to the back of the line. The people who need the most help get the least priority when the airport is at its busiest. That's when you're most likely to have a tight connection. That's when you can least afford to wait. And that's exactly when the system is designed to fail you. Here's one more thing that will make you shake your head. It's 2026. We have artificial intelligence, real-time flight tracking apps that can tell you exactly where your Uber driver is at any given second. But most airports are still using paging systems from the 1990s to coordinate wheelchair assistance. There's no app showing you where your assigned attendant is. There's no real-time tracking. When a gate agent radios for a wheelchair, that request goes into a queue somewhere, and maybe someone shows up. Maybe they don't. There's no accountability because there's no visibility. Airlines could fix this tomorrow. They could implement the same tracking technology they used for baggage. They could hire enough staff. They could pay decent wages that reduce turnover. They could provide real training. But all of that costs money, and as long as there are no consequences for failure, why would they spend it? So, what can you actually do to protect yourself in a system that's designed to fail you? Let me give you a specific, step-by-step plan that could save your next trip. First, request wheelchair assistance at least 48 hours before your flight, and do not just check a box online. Call the airline directly, speak to a human being, get a confirmation number, and write down the name of the agent you spoke with. The reason this matters is that online requests sometimes get lost in the system. A phone call with a real person creates a record that's harder to ignore. 24 hours before your flight, call the airline again and verify that the wheelchair request is still in the system. I know this sounds paranoid, but requests disappear all the time. Confirming the day before gives you a chance to fix it if something went wrong. Second, arrive at the airport at least 3 hours early, even for domestic flights. I know that sounds excessive. I know you're used to arriving 90 minutes before boarding, but the wheelchair assistance system is so unreliable that you need to build in massive time buffers. Assume the system will fail. Plan as if you're going to wait 90 minutes. If help arrives in 15 minutes, great, you'll have extra time to relax at the gate. But if it doesn't, you won't miss your flight. Third, document everything. Screenshot your confirmation email showing the wheelchair request. Take a photo of the request in the airlines app if it shows up there. When you arrive at the airport and tell the gate agent you're waiting for assistance, note the time. If assistance doesn't arrive within 15 minutes, start taking notes. Write down what time you asked for help, who you spoke to, what they told you. If you have a smartphone, you can even take short videos as timestamps, not to post on social media, but to have as evidence if you need to file a complaint later. Fourth, and this is the most important thing most people don't know, if wheelchair assistance doesn't show up, or if something goes seriously wrong, use this exact phrase. I need to speak with a CRO, a customer relations officer, immediately. Airlines are required by federal law to have a CRO available at every airport. This is someone with more authority than gate agents. Someone specifically trained in disability accommodation. Most passengers have never heard of CROs because airlines don't advertise their existence. Gate agents often won't mention them unless you specifically ask. But the moment you say those words, I need to speak with a CRO immediately, the situation changes. CROs have the authority to make things happen that regular gate agents can't. They can hold a flight. They can arrange alternative transportation. They can authorize hotel rooms and meal vouchers. Knowing this option exists gives you leverage. Fifth, if something goes wrong, if you miss a flight because of wheelchair assistance failure, if your wheelchair is damaged, if you experience anything that violates your rights, file a Department of Transportation complaint within 24 hours. You can do this online at the Aviation Consumer Protection Division website. Include every detail, confirmation numbers, names, times, flight numbers, exactly what happened and when. The dot tracks complaint patterns. When multiple complaints come in about the same airline or the same airport, it triggers investigations. Your individual complaint might not change anything immediately, but you're contributing to a pattern that could force systemic change. Sixth, consider alternatives that reduce your dependence on the airline system. If you're traveling somewhere for more than a few days, consider shipping your wheelchair ahead using FedEx or UPS. It costs money, usually $50 to $100, but your wheelchair will arrive safely, and you can rent a basic wheelchair at the airport just to get through the terminal. Another option is to rent a wheelchair at your destination through a medical supply company. Most cities have companies that rent mobility equipment. It's not ideal, but it's better than being stranded with a broken wheelchair. And finally, avoid tight connections. If you need wheelchair assistance, book flights with at least 2 hours between connections, preferably 3. I know that makes your travel day longer, I know it's inconvenient, but the wheelchair assistance system is so unreliable that tight connections are a huge gamble. 7th, know your legal rights under the Air Carrier Access Act. Airlines cannot refuse to provide wheelchair assistance. They cannot require you to travel with a personal care attendant. They cannot charge you for assistance. They cannot make you sit in a specific section of the plane just because you use a wheelchair. If an airline violates any of these rules, you have legal recourse. Now, most seniors aren't going to sue an airline, but knowing your rights means you can push back when someone tries to tell you something that isn't true. Now let me show you some data that might help you make better decisions about which airlines to fly and which airports to avoid. The Department of Transportation publishes wheelchair complaint data every year. I went through the 2025 numbers, and here's what they show. United Airlines received the most wheelchair-related complaints of any carrier, 2,847 complaints in 1 year. American Airlines was second with 2,103 complaints. Delta had 1,689. Southwest had 1,203. JetBlue, surprisingly, had the fewest among major carriers, 487 complaints. Now, complaint numbers alone don't tell the whole story because larger airlines have more passengers. But even adjusting for passenger volume, United and American have significantly worse track records than their competitors. If you have a choice between airlines and you need wheelchair assistance, the data suggests you're better off avoiding United and American if possible. Airport hubs also matter. Newark Airport has an average wheelchair assistance wait time of 94 minutes. O'Hare in Chicago is 87 minutes. LAX is 76 minutes. Atlanta is 71 minutes. If you're booking a connection and you need wheelchair assistance, try to avoid these hubs if you have alternatives. Smaller airports generally have shorter wait times, though service quality can vary. Interestingly, a few airlines have actually implemented better practices, and it's worth knowing about them. Alaska Airlines created a dedicated wheelchair assistance team at their Seattle hub. These are employees directly hired by Alaska, not contractors, and they're paid better than industry average. The result is lower turnover and more experienced staff. JetBlue has a 15-minute guarantee at most of their focus cities. If wheelchair assistance doesn't arrive within 15 minutes of your request, you're entitled to compensation, usually in the form of travel credits. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Southwest, despite having its own problems, maintains a higher ratio of wheelchair attendants to passengers than most competitors. That doesn't mean you'll never wait, but statistically, you're less likely to experience extreme delays. Use this information strategically. If you're booking a trip and you need wheelchair assistance, choose airlines and routes that have better track records. It's not a guarantee, but it improves your odds. But here's the truth. Individual choices and personal preparation aren't enough. We need systemic change, and there's actually a path to get there, but it requires collective action. Right now, there's a bill sitting in Congress called the Wheelchair Access Accountability Act. It was introduced in early 2026, and it would do 3 major things. 1. Require real-time tracking of wheelchair assistance requests so passengers can see where their assigned attendant is, just like tracking a rideshare driver. 2. Establish mandatory fines of $10,000 per violation when airlines fail to provide timely assistance or damage wheelchairs. 3. Require airlines to maintain a supply of loaner wheelchairs at every major airport so passengers aren't stranded when their personal wheelchairs are damaged. This bill has bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats both agree it's necessary, but it's currently stalled in committee, and the reason is airline industry lobbying. The airlines are fighting this bill hard because it would cost them money and create real accountability. So, what can you do? Contact your representatives in Congress. You can find their contact information online. Call their offices or send emails. Use this script if you want. I'm a constituent and I'm calling to ask Representative X to support the Wheelchair Access Accountability Act. Airlines are abandoning disabled travelers, and we need accountability. Please tell the representative to move this bill out of committee and bring it to a vote. It takes 3 minutes. If enough people make those calls, it creates pressure. Another thing you can do is join advocacy organizations that are fighting for disabled travelers' rights. Paralyzed Veterans of America has an entire legal team dedicated to wheelchair access issues. United Spinal Association does advocacy and policy work. Joining these groups, even just signing up for their email lists, helps them demonstrate public support when they're lobbying for change. Share your stories publicly. If you or someone you love experienced wheelchair assistance failure, tell local news, write to newspapers, post on community forums. Media attention is one of the few things airlines actually respond to. When a story goes viral and makes them look bad, they scramble to fix it, at least temporarily. There are also class action lawsuits forming right now against several major airlines over wheelchair damage and assistance failures. If you've been affected, look into whether you qualify to join. Even if you don't get much money from a settlement, class actions force airlines to change their policies in ways that help future passengers. Here's a success story that proves pressure works. In late 2025, Denver International Airport received over 400 wheelchair complaints in just 3 months. Disability rights advocates organized, contacted local media, and met with airport officials. The attention got so intense that United, which operates a major hub there, was forced to respond. They hired a dedicated wheelchair assistance team, increased staffing, and implemented new tracking systems. Within 6 months, wait times at Denver dropped by 60%. That's proof that when enough people demand change, change happens. But it only happens when we refuse to accept the status quo. Let's come back to where we started, with John, the 76-year-old veteran who waited 87 minutes for wheelchair assistance and watched his wheelchair come back in pieces. I want you to know what happened after his nightmare trip. John filed a Department of Transportation complaint the day after he got home. He included every detail, every confirmation number, every timestamp. He joined a class action lawsuit against United for wheelchair damage, and here's what surprised him. Within 2 weeks of filing his complaint, he got a call from a United customer relations executive, not a regular agent, an executive, apologizing and offering him compensation. They reimbursed him the full $4,000 for his wheelchair repair. They gave him travel credits. They even sent him a letter acknowledging that the service he received was unacceptable. Did that erase the trauma of sleeping on an airport floor? No. Did it give him back the time he lost with his daughter? No. But it proved something important. When you know your rights, when you document everything, when you take the time to file official complaints, airlines pay attention in a way they don't when you just suffer in silence. John still travels to see his daughter, but now he books flights with 3-hour connections. He arrives at the airport 4 hours early, he has his crow request phrase saved in his phone, he carries printed copies of his confirmation numbers, and he never, ever trusts the system to work the way it's supposed to. He's made peace with the fact that he has to work around a broken system instead of relying on it. Is that fair? Absolutely not. Should a decorated veteran who served his country have to assume the worst every time he flies? No, but this is the reality we're living in, and until the system changes, protecting yourself means being prepared for failure. You deserve better than this. Every senior who needs wheelchair assistance deserves dignity, respect, and competent help. You deserve to visit your grandchildren without fear. You deserve to attend weddings and funerals and family gatherings without wondering if you'll be abandoned in an airport. You deserve a system that treats you like a human being, not an inconvenience. But right now, that's not the system we have. So, until it changes, arm yourself with knowledge. Save the crow phrase. Document everything. File complaints when things go wrong. Join advocacy groups. Contact your representatives about the Wheelchair Access Accountability Act and share this video with anyone who needs to see it, because the more people who understand what's happening, the harder it becomes for airlines to keep ignoring it. Which part of this crisis shocked you the most? Was it the 90-minute wait times? The pausing protections? The airlines spending millions to avoid accountability? Let me know in the comments, because I'm tracking every development in this story, and your experiences help me understand what people are actually facing. Comment dignity if you believe disabled travelers deserve respect and real help. And if you know someone who uses wheelchair assistance at airports, someone who needs to hear this information, share this video with them right now. It could save their next trip. Subscribe so you never miss updates on this crisis. Because I'm following the Wheelchair Access Accountability Act, tracking complaint data, and reporting every time an airline gets caught failing passengers, this isn't going away, and neither am I. They're counting on you to give up, to stop traveling, to accept being treated as less than. Prove them wrong. You've earned your freedom. Don't let a broken system take it from you.